You are about to write your first essays for this class. Are you excited? At least your first formal essays, I guess. You've written some other things, but they've been more creative. This time you're going to write something a little more professional. Now, for some of you, this may be the first time you've ever done something like that. You might be a little bit nervous. Some of you may be pretty experienced essay writers already, and you may think, yeah, I can do this, why not? My goal today is to help you plan your time a little more wisely. I want to help you use your time more effectively so that this essay test doesn't take you forever. Now, I'm going to do some examples for you of the things that I do when I write tests. Now, you can take my word for it or you can choose to ignore me, but just let me tell you about how successful this has made things for me. I've done tests like this for years in school, starting in junior high school, working all the way through college, and it was something that really helped me to use my time efficiently, especially on time tests where I only had about an hour to work with, and I needed to make sure that I could organize my essay and write my essay in about an hour. Those of you who tend to just get started and you don't plan out your time very well, you might be wasting a lot of time. So my goal today is to help you use your time more efficiently and to help you write a little bit more in a little bit more of an organized way, unlike my thoughts. Are you ready? All right, let's get going. So for practice today, we're going to have an imaginary question that you're never actually going to write an essay on for this class. But the imaginary question is this: which Disney princess is the best role model for young girls? All right, are you ready? This is how I get started. The first thing that I do is I make something called a mind map. Now, this mind map is something that will help you to kind of just plunk all your thoughts down onto your paper and then organize them later. This is the brain dump section. This is the part where you get everything that comes into your head down so that you can see it, and later on you'll filter through what's worthwhile and what's not worthwhile. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is start making a list of princesses. The first princess I'm going to write down is Belle from Beauty and the Beast. The next princess I'm going to write down is Sleeping Beauty. After that, I'm going to write down, say, Cinderella. And then the last princess I'll write down, let's go with, oh, I don't know, Ariel. Let's go with Ariel. All right, so these are our 4 princesses. The next thing that you need to do is start making a list of the qualities that they have that would make them either a good role model or a not so good role model. Let's start with Sleeping Beauty. Sleeping Beauty doesn't really do a whole lot, does she? She spends a lot of time sleeping. So the first thing that I'm going to put down is that she sleeps a lot. If you remember from the movie, she also spends a little bit of time talking with animals and singing in the forest. So she sings. And she talks with the animals. There's that one part where she's disobedient because the fairy godmother's group that she's living with, they tell her to stay where she is, and she runs off on her own anyway. So she's a little disobedient. Oops. And she's a little bit of a dreamer because she meets that prince in the woods, even though she doesn't know she's a prince, and they dance for a while and it's really exciting or whatever else, right? So those are some of the qualities of Sleeping Beauty. You can put down any on your own paper if you're taking notes that maybe you thought of that I didn't. The next princess, let's talk about Ariel. Ariel is another dreamer. She has a lot of big ambitions for herself. And she's another one that's definitely disobedient because her father has told her not to go up shore where the humans can see her, but she does it anyway. She sells her soul to a sea witch so that she can go meet this prince. She gets what she wants in the end. But she has a lot of faith, right? Like she wants this prince and she's willing to go for it even though there are trials. So she's got a little bit of faith in herself and in love and whatever else. So those are some different qualities that Ariel has. Cinderella works hard. Cinderella talks to birds. She talks to the birds and to the mice. She's another dreamer. This is kind of a common theme among Disney princesses. What are some other things Cinderella does? She cleans. She's a clean person. She goes to the ball. She's a little bit frightened because she runs away, maybe, so she's a little bit nervous of being who she is because she doesn't think the prince will like her if she shows up in her normal clothes, right? So maybe she's a little bit lacking in confidence with who she is. Then we've got Belle, who reads a lot. She's a little bit stubborn. But she serves because she looks after her dad. She has a lot of faith because she's, talking with these inanimate objects. She sees the good in people. And there are a lot of other different things. Now, as you're going, one thing that I haven't done up here, but one thing that you could do if you wanted, is actually start making lists of examples where such qualities show up in that person. For example, one place where Cinderella works hard is at the very beginning of the movie, when she has to get up before when the bell chimes or whatever, she gets mad because there's this alarm that wakes her up, but then she gets right to work. So there's that example. Belle seeing the good in people, she stays with the Beast. She fights against Gaston. Fights against Gaston actually going to kill the Beast. So as you can see, like as you start making these mind maps, there might be some times where you say, oh wait, I remember an example of that, and you want to write that down here. You can get that all down. It's time for filtering later. So this is kind of what your mind map might look like. Mine's pretty messy. It's not terribly organized, but it gets the point across. The point is that you want to try and get everything down. You'll filter it later. All right, so now it's time to filter. Are you ready? This is the part where we start thinking about which parts of our brainstorming make any sense at all with the question that you've been asked. So the question that you've been asked is, which Disney princess is the best role model for young girls? So the first thing we probably want to do is eliminate the Disney princesses that aren't good role models for young girls. Now, immediately, I'm going to eliminate Sleeping Beauty, because what does she really do? She doesn't really do much of anything. She spends the entire movie basically sleeping while somebody else comes to rescue her, right? She's not a very active person, and that's not a very good role model for young girls. At least I don't think so. The next person I'm going to eliminate is Ariel. She's probably the most obvious example because she's a little bit selfish. She spends so much time worrying about getting what she wants that she ignores everybody else in the path, basically. She gets what she wants. And that's not a very good role model for young girls. So we're down to Cinderella and Belle. Now, both of these, I think, are actually pretty good examples of what a role model should be for young girls. So this is where I get to be a little bit picky. Remember, this question is asking for your opinion to a degree, so you get to pick the one that you know the most about. Now, I saw Cinderella many, many years ago, but I haven't seen it recently, as opposed to Beauty and the Beast, which I've seen more recently, and I know the musical pretty well. So instead of writing about Cinderella, I'm going to write about Belle from Beauty and the Beast, because she's the one I know the most about. That's one of the most important things you can do with these essays. This is how the mind map helps you. You get to see not only what you're thinking, and you can kind of organize your thoughts a little better, but you also start realizing what you know the most about. When you realize what you know the most about, that's usually a pretty good thing to write your essay on because you'll have plenty to say, right? So I'm going to pick Belle because she's the one I know the most about. Our next step is an outline. Get out some paper. You're going to do this with me. So our last step before we actually start writing our essay is the outline. This is something that people do very, very differently. Not everybody does this like I do. I'm going to show you the method that works for me because that's how I do it. And if I had my way, I would actually force you to do this. There might be a point where I actually try and find a way to make you do this, but because we're doing this online, I can't actually force you to show me this part of your work. So I'm going to trust that you trust me, and then I'm going to trust that you're willing to give it a shot because you do trust me. I've had lots of students in the live class say, you know, Miss Newman, I really didn't want to do that because it looked like it was going to take forever. But in the end, it actually made my essay writing a lot easier. And I'm not making that up. They actually have told me this. I did not pull that from their mouths at all. So they said that initially, while it did maybe take them a little bit more time to get used to the system, once they actually tried it, it saved them time. So really, honestly, I'm doing this to try and save you time. Trust me, all right? So an outline looks kind of like this. The first thing you need to include is your introduction. So you start with an introduction, and this introduction includes what we call a thesis. Your thesis is your opinion. That's where you say what you believe. That's where you say what your opinion is of the topic that you've been asked. So in this case, your thesis might look something like this. Belle is the best role model for young girls because, and then you're going to fill in the blanks. These blanks are where you're going to fill in details from that mind map that you did earlier. And you get those, again, down here. So you've got kind of five main parts of your outline. You've got this introduction that includes a thesis, and this is your thesis. Then you have 3 main points. We call these supporting points. And then you have at least 2, maybe 3 supporting details. These supporting details go back to your supporting points. How's that for confusing? So these points right here are actually stated right in your thesis. And these points right here, these supporting details, they go back to this supporting point. So you see how everything goes back to what you stated your opinion was? This way we know that everything that you say actually belongs in your essay. We don't want to include any details that aren't important or any details that don't really matter. So that's how we kind of organize our thoughts. So if you remember back from our mind map, we were talking about the reasons why Belle is a good role model for girls. One of the reasons we mentioned is that she reads. Maybe you want to include the fact that Belle reads because you think it's good for people to read. So that's maybe your first point. Your second point could be that she has faith. And that she sees the good in people. Your last point may be then that she serves. Or that she's selfless. Now you see how these points right here are not incomplete sentences? These points right here, remember, this outline is just to get stuff out. You're not trying to write your essay yet, you're just organizing your thoughts. So these points right here are not incomplete sentences yet. Eventually, when you're actually writing your essay, they will be incomplete sentences. So don't fool yourself into thinking that you can just write the word read and then period and then start writing. No, it does actually need to be in a complete sentence. You might say something like, one way that Belle is a good example for girls is because she reads. And then down in this next paragraph, because each of these is a new paragraph, you would say one reason or another reason that Belle is a good role model is because she sees the good in other people. All right? Just to review that, I want to make sure that's clear. Each of these points, so A, B, and C, each of these is a new paragraph. And each of them begins with a supporting point that's written out in a complete sentence. You following? I hope so. Now underneath these, what you're going to do is put examples of where you see how she reads or how she uses reading to be a good role model. So one thing that she does is that she reads challenging books. You remember that part at the very beginning of the movie where Gaston comes and steals that book from her, and he talks about how the book doesn't have any pictures in it, and she's like, well, yes, some people like to have ideas and thoughts and things, Gaston. Well, that's an example of something that she does that's a good challenge. She wants to help inspire people to read not just any old book, but good books. So that's one thing that you could talk about. Another thing, maybe under C, this idea of faith or seeing the good in other people, you could talk about when she protects the beast from Gaston. from Gaston and how he was trying to go kill the beast and Belle tried to save him and actually ended up warning the castle and all that kind of stuff. So that's a good example of where she sees the faith in others or sees good in people. So remember that the goal with this is to organize your essay in the best possible way. So here's my last tip for you. Are you ready? When you're writing an essay, you want your points to go from maybe the weakest to the strongest so that your essay kind of looks like a funnel. Where you've got the most important stuff kind of at the top with this introduction, but then you've got maybe your not so strong point, your stronger point, and then your best point ever. That way you leave your readers thinking that you've saved kind of your best argument for the end. So that's why I put this idea of her being selfless and how she serves others at the end, because I think, for me at least, maybe that's the best example of how Belle is a good role model, is that she serves others and that she's selfless. She risks her own life to save the beast, for example, would be one thing that I could put down here. So after you've got all of this outline filled out, that's when you actually start writing. Now, how do you use this when you're writing your essay? Well, it's pretty simple. You've already planned out your main point. You know your opinion. So you just have to lead into it by writing, just kind of introducing the topic. You restate the question, basically. Then you know exactly what your main points are because you've already written them out. So you just describe them with more detail. Instead of doing quick little non-sentences, you write it out in detail. So you describe in detail what I talked about maybe with how she reads challenging books and how that's a good thing because a lot of girls nowadays are maybe reading books that aren't very good. So you talk about how she's reading the classics and that's good for people to remember. That's a good example. Then, after you've done all of this at the bottom, that's when you write out your conclusion, where more or less you go back to this introduction and say, okay, so because Belle reads, and because she sees the good in other people, and because she's selfless, that makes her a very good role model for young girls compared to Ariel, who is very selfish, or Sleeping Beauty, who doesn't do anything, or Cinderella, who is maybe a little bit lacking in self-confidence. I hope this helped. It's kind of difficult to teach this. It's just one of those things where you just need to practice it. You need to give it a try. You need to try over and over and over again to see what you can do to write these essays pretty well. I promise that as the year goes on, you'll get better at this. But I will challenge you to give this a shot. I promise it's something that will make your time better used, and it will make your essays a little bit more organized. So give it a shot, okay? Please, give it a try. Come on, trust me. I know it works. Get to work.